Okay, welcome to the world of Yarah formation. Thank you all very much for tuning in this fine morning or afternoon, wherever you may be in this beautiful planet. We're transmitting live from our home base in Astoria, Queens, New York City. I'm Ben. This is my partner Dee Dee.
Hi.
And as you guessed it, the other fellow's August. And behind us is the kernel of all operations, our favorite Syrian interface, the hound, the dog, Shmono. So, without any further ado, we're going to get into our friendly discussion with our dear friend and Pyradym mentor, Mr. August Worley.
Okay. I think just before we get started, just a little outlay of what to expect as far as the format. So we're going to be having a chat and discussion, and that should run about until 11:45. And then we're going to have question and answer. So feel free anytime during this chat, just feel free to text or type in your questions to Facebook Live, and I will read them off, and we can see if we can get around to answering your questions from about 11:45 to 12. And then 12, we're going to take a break so that we can set up the audio for the meditation. So there'll be a break in the Facebook Live transmission, but we'll be back on same link, same page. And then the sound meditation will run from 12:12 for 33 minutes today.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Yep. An extra 11 minutes for you all. And then we'll have just some ambient sounds to close out so you can process and go about your day. Just to give you a heads up to how we're going to flow with the conversation today, we're going to go into the start off with the background on August, how the Pyradym came to be, and a few of the older details concerning Pyradym technology. And then we're going to bring it up a little more current with the medical applications and how we're moving forward with the evolution of Pyradym technology. So, August.
Morning.
How are you, sir?
Doing well. Doing well.
Great. Thanks for joining us today, taking the time to share with the world what you do.
Yeah.
So,
what's happening in Astoria today?
What's happening? A bit of rain.
Yeah.
Beautiful day. It's very atmospheric. It's perfect.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah, I had to dim some of the sunlight. It's pretty bright down here today in North Carolina. I'm in Swannanoa, which is just outside Asheville.
Yes, beautiful place.
Yeah.
Very energetic.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. The land of fresh air. Oh, yeah. What's the term for it? How did Asheville get built?
What do they call it? Well, I still like the Chamber of Commerce. They say altitude affects attitude. We're at about a half mile in elevation, but Asheville is kind of like a big quartz bowl, if you will. So we're sort of like this little island of awareness in Appalachia.
Yes, and it brought a lot of people there, didn't it?
Yeah.
For the fresh air and the healing properties, right?
Yeah. People used to come here to take the airs, as they would say, and back when they had sanatoriums, for where people would come to convalesce from polio and some of the other afflictions that were rampant in that part of the history of the area.
Yeah, so your head's quite literally in the clouds most of the time then?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Literally and figuratively.
Yes, I can relate to that, as you know.
Well, the reason I bought my house is that when I walked around the grounds outside, I noticed there was a lot of mica right in the ground. It's just this region is indigenous to pretty much every mineral that you could imagine. In this portion of the Appalachian chain has an abundance of all sorts of gems and minerals.
You just dipped a little bit in volume. Is everything okay?
As far as I know.
Okay. Everyone out there, can you hear us loud and clear before we get into it? Or forever hold your peace. What are we getting? Yeah, I think everyone can.
Yeah.
Okay, so August, who are you?
Doing good. Doing good. Busier than ever.
No, not how. Who?
Who am I? Oh.
Yeah, what's the background story on Mr. August Worley?
You want the joke answer or the real answer?
Is there a difference?
No, it's all a joke. Yeah, my background is a musician, electrical engineer, and I've managed to sort of combine the two throughout my career in various ways, shapes, or forms, to sort of prepare myself for creating Pyradym. As I'm fond of saying, I can't, you can't make this up. My path has just been one coincidence and synchronicity after another of just being in the right place at the right time. And I always like to say, I borrowed a quarter from my mom when I think I was about 9 years old, because I was, and I still play ice hockey, and I've always been an ice hockey fan. But we went to a grocery store and we went past all the little gumball machines, the vending machines, and I saw that they had all the little emblems for some of the hockey teams in them, in the little bubbles, So I borrowed a quarter from her, and I wanted to get one of those emblems, So put it in there and turn it, and what came out is this little, and I should go get it. It's still on my refrigerator. It's a little 4 aces picture, and it's just in 2 colors because it's cheap, it's red on white, and it just says luck is where preparation meets opportunity. And it's one of those kind of things that's like, this isn't a hockey emblem. What the hell am I going to do with this? I'm 9.
It's quite profound for a bubblegum machine, though.
Right? That's what I mean.
So, cookie.
It just got stuck on the fridge, and I just remember it would kind of move up the side of the refrigerator as I got older, as I got taller. But it was always one of those kind of things you just kind of look at it and go, oh, yeah, whatever. But then you really do, as you start to participate in the opportunity and in the luck, realize it's like, wow, this is really true. Luck is where preparation meets opportunity. Studied hard in school. I really wasn't that big of a fan of school, but I did the work, put the effort into it. It's just like any other kid. The stuff I liked to do, I got A's in. The stuff I didn't really care for, I usually got C's in. I was one of those kids that would study on the bus on the way into school, still do well on the test, that kind of thing. But the preparation made me kind of the right man for the right job when somebody would come across my path and say, hey, we're looking for somebody that knows how to do this. And again, it's just a progression where an off chance meeting with a guy I worked with reintroduced me to somebody that I used to work with at Moog Music up in Buffalo. And at that time, he was looking for some help because he was contacted by Keith Emerson's people from Emerson, Lake and Palmer for somebody to do some work for them on the old Moog stuff that he was a pioneer of. And, working for Keith and, getting on the, special thanks liner notes for the last, LP led me to, having something to present to Bob Moog when he was looking for some help. And it just kind of keeps, connection leads to connection, leads to connection, leads to connection.
August, can I ask you to explain for some of those who are not in the audio world and music world, a little bit brief about Moog and why it's important or why it's relevant?
Yeah. Back in the turbulent 60s, there was a new way of creating sound, and it was using electronics. And it pretty much expanded the vocabulary of popular music and revolutionized the music industry. Um, and I find it really interesting. There was two guys that were doing it. On the East Coast was Bob Moog, who's a New Yorker. You know, he grew up not very far from you. And on the West Coast, there was a guy named Don Buchla, who was also inventing a synthesizer at the same time. And these guys were, as so often happens, these two guys were creating the same kind of technologies, completely unaware of the other. So it was just, you know, the man, the machine, and the moment sort of occurrence. With bands such as the Monkees, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, all of these popular music groups, the Doors, were starting to use this new technology to redefine music and add a different level. And we're going to be coming back to this theme a lot, but adding a different element of emotional context to the music. Because, you know, now we're with a synthesizer, we're able to create sounds that have never been heard before, and sounds that you couldn't create any other way.
And those sounds really sculpted consciousness of the time, right? Through the use in especially Star Trek, right? Because all the sci-fi noises that we all know only too well all came from the synthesizer. Before that, there was no sound of sci-fi, correct?
Well, there was, but it was you know, like Hammond organs, the theremin. The theremin is predated the Moog synthesizer by about 70 years, and it's actually a derivation of radio technology, and discovered quite accidentally. And if you don't know what a theremin is, for those who don't know what a theremin is, it's that sort of wavering pitched sound that you hear in all the alien movies from the 50s. You know, Good Vibrations is another example. That's a form of a theremin. Too early in the morning for me.
Too early in the morning for me. There you go. I'll put it out there.
There you go. Give me that guy.
Yeah, I've no shame.
But yeah, so, you know, and it's really interesting because there was such a societal and cultural revolution occurring at the time. Everything was, you know, on the table. People were starting to experiment with psychotropic drugs, transcendental meditation.
And even the concept of the conscious collective thoughts about thinking about life elsewhere and, you know, outer space. I think it expanded our thought process about things beyond ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because in the context of a vocabulary, and Bob Moog used to make the joke that whenever you know, if you have a tone and then you modulate it and to create that woo, 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 and have it pitched down, it's sort of like that. Well, that's the sound of the arriving UFO. I mean, it's almost like a given, you know, this is what the spaceship is going to sound like when they arrive. It's like, well, you know, no, they're not, but it's a suggestive kind of thing. There's an emotional context there, emotional content there that resonates with the human consciousness in a very certain way, you know, and it created a vocabulary.
Yeah, so I mean, this kind of leads into where we're going next. It's almost like there was a consciousness pushing itself forward, introducing itself through the vehicle of Bob and the fellow on the West Coast together with that eureka moment. It wasn't like just one had it. It's like something was rising up, which, as we both know, is really the essence of Pyradym and how it came to you. So let's go into that fantastic story of how did you meet Pyradym?
Well, you know, I've always been very aware of how music made you feel, because that's why I became a musician. When I was a kid, I would listen to a song that I liked over and over and over and over and over again, because I always thought that someday it would reveal itself to me somehow, that I would understand why it made me feel that way. So carrying then, the musical and musician aspect forward with the engineering. And also I was starting to experiment with meditation and toning. So the first inkling I got of it was in a meditation where, you try to visualize colors and things like that when you're trying to resonate with your chakras and all that sonically. It just kind of popped in. It's like, wouldn't it be great? And then that's the thing I always say when I lecture, when I do classes and teaching the workshops and things like that for the kids, for synthesizers. I always present the idea of asking questions. And sometimes when you just ask a question, the universe is what answers. Just an abstract question, because I thought, wouldn't it be nice if there was some sort of a device that could help me in this pursuit of both meditation and also toning, because when you're toning by yourself, when you stop toning, there's a big empty there, so I thought, well, it'd be kind of neat. And as a singer, it's always nice to be able to sing with somebody. So it's like, just one of those random thoughts. It just kind of comes in and goes away. But then later on, working, when I first moved to Asheville, I was walking around downtown with my then wife, and there was a placard sign out in front of the Hayward Park Hotel saying that there was a singing bowl recital happening there. And it's like, wow, that's very new agey, it's a very Asheville kind of thing. So let's go check that out. So we went in there, and it wasn't just a singing bowl recital. There was the guy that created singing bowls. It was a Tibetan monk. And, he had the orange robe on, and he was surrounded by all these singing bowls. He had about a dozen singing bowls, and they all look like hell because they're hundreds of years old. And apparently we got there right at the interval, because he did a set and then talked about it. And then he did another set. And he talked about how he created singing bowls, and he was in a lineage and an apprenticeship as a singing bowl master. And, this lineage dictates that as you're going to transition from your human experience, you gift all of your singing bowls to your apprentices. And so some of these singing bowls were in a continual, being passed down from singing bowl master to singing bowl master. So that's why they all looked like they're hundreds of years old, because they were. And so, and then he started talking about and these are brass singing bowls. And he started talking about how when you're making a singing bowl, you're hammering this brass into shape, and there's a prayer, and there's an intention, and there's a focus on each and every hammer stroke. And it really it was so inspiring just to hear about this story. I never knew so much about a singing bowl. And then he said, well, okay, well, I'll shut up now and just play the singing bowls. And, he just started weaving this tapestry of singing bowl music. And it was interesting because I had noticed, as a musical instrument designer, that he had located the singing bowls in such a way that when you activated one of them, the two nearest to that one would start to resonate and create different overtones. And so he just kind of went around this semicircle of singing bowls, and just kind of weaving these singing bowl tones. They peak and then they'd fade away, and et cetera, et cetera. And it was very transcendental. So, we all walked out of there about 4 inches off the ground. And on the way out, there was a table, and there was a postcard stack there. And it was their literature promoting the gig, right? So I took one of those, and I said, I should show this to Bob. This was such an amazing experience to meet this guy. He's like, like a kindred spirit. This is a guy that makes a very primitive form of musical instrument, but a very profound one. And so I took the postcard back to my office, back to the office at Moog, threw it in my desk, and kind of forgot about it for several months. and was rooting around through a pile of stuff, trying to find, I don't know, a ruler or whatever. And I found the postcard, and Bob happened to be in my office. And we had the prototype Voyager synthesizer that we were, working on collaboration. And I just kind of randomly pulled it out and said, "Hey, Bob, check this out. I saw this guy when I first moved here," and basically told him the story that I just related. And then, I love it when these things happen, because everybody's done this, where you just say something and you have no idea where that came from. It just sort of falls out of your mouth, and even yourself kind of steps back and goes, "What the hell was that? Who said that? That's not something I expected to say." But I said to Bob, it's like, "Hey, Bob, have you ever thought about us creating an electronic singing bowl?" And he took the postcard and checked it out and looked at it, and he handed it back to me, and he said, "Here, you should do this." And then walked out of my office. And it was like one of those kind of, I don't know where the hell the question came from, and I really didn't expect that answer. So I just kind of sat with it. And then it sort of that was like the first phase of it, because then the second phase was I met a channeling teacher on a cruise, and later studied with her and how to channel, because we all channel. Everybody thinks it's some sort of woo pursuit, but everybody does that. When you get that flash of inspiration that is sort of outside of your limitations of thought, then you wonder where that is. It could be cooking, it could be baking, it could be, you're making a chair or whatever. And these flashes of inspiration kind of come into your consciousness. That's a form of channeling. And so as part of my meditative practice and moving forward as an energy healer, I thought this would be something to actually learn how to do. And on the very first meditation that she conducted, and the woman's name is Elmerilla Bailey. She has transitioned since in 2007. But she did a guided meditation, and there was 13 of us in the class, and I went somewhere, and I met this being, for lack of a better word. It was this energy, and it was one of those kind of feelings that I felt like I'd known this person, this being, for my entire life, if not my entire existence. It was like connecting with your best friend from second grade after you haven't seen them for 20 years. You just sort of hug and you just pick right up where you left off. And so the communication with this being was in a nonverbal context. We would tone back and forth. And this is me in this other reality. I'm not physically toning. But we were exchanging information by toning, and it was almost like we could read each other's thoughts. And then the tonal context was also supporting the thoughts. And since it's an etheric being, it could change color, it could change shape to support the message it was trying to convey to me. And so we had this conversation, and it seemed like it lasted for like hours. But in reality, it was probably only about 10 minutes. I think the meditation was only about 20 minutes. But, it was fascinating to me that this being could communicate a full range of information very quickly, just supported by shape. It would be a sphere, it'd be an ellipse, it would be an egg, all three-dimensional shapes, change colors, blue, red, green, all that kind of stuff. So, and so when we all came back to reality, we all went around the room and shared our experiences. And it's, y'all not going to believe this one, but, I related the experience. And Marilla said, "That's a very profound experience that you should hang on to." And it's like, oh, all right, well,
Second confirmation.
Second confirmation. The third confirmation came almost immediately after we got back from that experience. It was a 2-day workshop. So we got back late Sunday night, and my wife, she was she was working. I was between jobs at the time. I was getting ready to start a job in the following week. So I'm home alone with the cat, and I start hearing this toning, this droning sound. It sounded like a big, big singing bowl in the house. And, this whole, kind of thing. It was huge. It sounded great. But where's it coming from? And, this was June. So I remember going around the house trying to figure out where this sound was coming from. So, you could check the refrigerator's not running, the furnace isn't running, it's June. There's got to be like a guy outside with a leaf blower or something. So I opened up the sliding glass door onto the back patio, and there's nothing outside. The sound is inside the house, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And it persisted for most of the afternoon, and then it just kind of stopped. Cat didn't even seem to, notice it was going on at all. So it's like, okay, that was interesting. So I asked my wife, did you ever hear this like big singing bowl sound going on inside the house? And she's no. So this went on for 3 days. So the second day it was like, oh, okay, here it is again, running around trying to figure out where it's coming from, nothing. And so the third day, it was like, okay, I get it. This is sort of like for me, because nobody else is experiencing this apparently. Okay, I get it. So am I supposed to do something like this? I wasn't working for Moog at the time, but I just finished doing the Voyager project. So it's one of those kind of things where you kind of go, it kind of sounds like a singing bowl. And then I remember the conversation with Bob, have you ever thought about creating an electronic singing bowl? And it's like, oh, okay. Well, this is sort of like the third piece of information that I'm supposed to do this. And okay, well, then you start asking the questions. It's like, okay, an electronic singing bowl. What would an electronic singing bowl look like? Because it doesn't have to look like a singing bowl. It can look like anything, right? So that's when you start asking questions and the universe starts plugging in information. So then the idea of having a geometry that was able to do to act as a light transducer, a colored light transducer, and also have some sort of transcendental shape. It was right around that same time that I read an article about the functional, it was an analysis of the why do Stradivarius violins why they're so revered for their tone and all that. And there was a little dissertation about why a violin is shaped like that. And it was intended to have the connotations of a timeless aspect and to emulate the contours of a woman's body. It's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So there's, not only is it a functional resonant, vehicle, but also there's a sort of a transcendental aspect to that as well.
And it's, I think it interacts with the human body based on those shapes and forms. I played cello for a brief time when I was a child, and I just remember, it's the size of your body cavity, and you're in the same positioning, and the emotion that I felt playing it was much more than any other instrument I had ever played before, and felt very connected in a very human way to it. So I can see how the form of and the shape can affect how we interact with that sound.
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, you felt it as an extension of yourself, and you can interface with it physically. It's right there on your shoulder. And then I remembered in high school, I used to get a pass out of study hall to go to the music room and play the double bass. I could never afford a double bass, but I would go in there and just jam on their double bass for about an hour. And I was like the only one that played it. I was the only one that knew how to play it. But I would just play their double bass. And, when you grab that big old piece of plywood and put it right next to your body, you can feel that. So, you play an F sharp and it's like, wow, that's pretty weird. I can feel that in my right knee. And it's like, oh, that's about it. It's like, oh, okay, that's right. I got hit with a hockey puck last night playing hockey. So, there's some sort of damage there. So there's some sort of energetic blockage there. And this is able to resonate that, so you start associating the principles of resonance using a musical instrument with its impact on the physical body. So now you've got this connective instrument that you can interface with on a very high level, very esoteric, very nuanced level. And it functions as an extension of your consciousness, your soul, if you will. And so again, all this stuff is informing the beginning of the development of Pyradym, because again, as an electronic singing bowl, well, you can't really interface in the same way with a singing bowl. You have to use, you have to agitate it. You can't physically hold it to transmit that vibration into your body, because of course, as soon as you hold it, you're going to dampen it and it will stop resonating. So you have to put it on a surface in order for it to resonate. And then you start thinking about, well, resonance and resonant materials. What are the best resonant materials? And now you start getting into, well, violins and cellos and double basses are all made of wood, pianos, woodwinds, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like, okay, so this is going to have to be some sort of a wooden geometry. And I remembered that the Pyradym being kept going back to a 52-degree pyramid. Again, I went through all the platonic solids, a cube, a sphere, and all that, but it just kept coming back to that geometry, like the Giza pyramids. And then, I think it's really fascinating how this stuff just starts to gain momentum.
Can I just interject right now? It's 11:42. Of course, I've done a classic underestimation of time and content, so we shall be extending this 15 minutes. Okay.
But if you have any questions, again, just feel free to type them into the chat, and I will pull them up.
Yeah.
As we can.
Absolutely. So meditation will commence at 12:27. Leading on from what you were just saying, why is it that a 52-degree pyramid resonates with us? Just the we're talking the shape, the geometry of a pyramid. Why is it that we're inherently attracted to it?
Well, it's interesting that it was the Egyptians that sort of pioneered that geometry, that technology, if you will, enough to want to build them over and over again. There was something about that geometry that seemed to be special. And from the geometrical perspective, or sacred geometry, you can look into, well, there's the triangle is represented. So the number 3 is represented. The number 4 is represented. So there's, the triangle aspect of it. When you look at the base of it, 4 sides, there's a square that's represented by it. But also there's the number 7 is represented as well. Oh, and the number 5 as well, because it's got 5 sides. The number 7 is represented by that geometry. Actually, it's not specifically 52 degrees. It's 51.785, I think it is. And basically with it, when you subdivide 360 degrees by 7, that's the number you get. And it's the only primary number that is not equally divisible into 360. 4 is 90, and 5 is 45, 6 is 60, et cetera, et cetera. But 7, and when you look at the numerology of the number 7, it's the number of the incorporeal. It's the number of the transcendent. There are 7 deadly sins. There are, how many times you see the number 7? Number 7 pops up all over the place. So it's the number of magic, if you will.
We're also getting a comment in talking about the grounding effects of meditating on that particular shape and form. Mm-hmm. So.
Oh, sure, absolutely. And it's. Again, there's so many other great resources for that, but there's a very purposeful aspect to the number 7 in our lives. And so, the other aspect too is that there are connection points, from what I understand, there are connection points in the DNA strand that are geometric, three-dimensional connection points. And, the pentagrams and heptagrams are represented, but there's also a pyramidal geometry represented. So, that's one of our basic geometrical structures.
So it's like an external reflection of our very own building blocks.
Sure, it's a constant, in other words. So, and again, it has that timeless aspect to it. It's us. It's part of us. So, again, the Egyptian cosmology, as above, so below.
Mm-hmm. So I was just watching or listening to a clip from Seth Horowitz. He's an auditory neuroscientist at Brown University, and he's really talking about how sound shapes our entire lives and the importance of sound and how sound works in the unconscious cognition. And that's one of the reasons why it has such a profound effect on our emotions. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about some of the feedback that we've received from people who sat in our meditations in person, and also those who've sat with us online. There is definitely a sense of profound emotion that comes up, and we could tag any emotion to it, positive or negative, but that the Pyradym is it's an unfamiliar sound. It's a novel sound to us. It's not anything like anything else I've ever heard. But why does it produce such powerful emotions within us when there's nothing kind of to attach us to it? Like, oh, that reminds me of this, or that reminds me of that. Mm-hmm. And maybe about how the modulation and all the wave effects kind of have a certain effect on us. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, like I say, that's a very broad range of topics, but in a nutshell, I would say, well, sound is a prime creative force in the universe. In the beginning was the word. Well, the word is sound. Okay. But also, I usually, when in lecture, I usually ask 2 questions of the audience as a thought exercise. And this is always kind of fun when you do it in front of a bunch of MDs, which I have done before on several occasions. But the first question I always like to ask is, do you ever wonder why you like a song? Because that's what made me become a musician, was the way that a song made me feel. And I've shared this experience, and I've gotten 100% feedback that everybody else did the same. And, the choice of being a musician or not is a personal choice. And a lot of people didn't pursue that. I did, because of the way that made me feel. But you will play a song over and over and over and over and over again because you like the way it makes you feel. So there is an emotional connection with that organization of frequencies, that particular organization of frequencies, because I actually majored in electrical engineering, and I minored in music composition because I thought it, scholastically studying why I liked a piece of music. And as a musician, you dissect different pieces of music, and again, why do I like this and why do I like that? And when you get into the building blocks of music, chords and tempo and all the very fundamental aspects of it, none of that holds water when you dissect it down to that element as being the causal component of the emotion. So in other words, if this song that you love dearly and listen to it all day long is in the key of A minor, that would mean logically that you would feel that same way about every song that's in the key of A minor. And that's not true. And, you've also probably experienced that where there was like a pop song that was covered by somebody else that didn't quite have the same emotional context. It's like, this version is wonderful. This version is, pretty close, but it just doesn't light me up the same way. And I always found it interesting, like back in the 60s with the Motown era, you know, they would have the same guys in the studios performing the same songs with the same arrangements. And they would just like, you know, okay, you know, Supremes, they come in, they record it, they leave. The Jackson 5 would come in, they'd sing it, and then they leave, that kind of thing. And then, but one version of it was superior to the other one. And through no manipulation or anything like that, it's just the way it was. There's some transcendental aspects emotionally in music.
And what's part two? What's the second question that you always present?
Well, the part two is that we're talking all about joy, right? I love this song, and you know, and there's a joy that's being created by this organization of notes. Well, I think one of the missing factors in healing is the joy of healing. You know, enjoying your life, and the reason you want to stay here and to continue to enjoy, you know, your life is your pursuit of happiness, if you will. So the second question I always like to ask is, well, again, the first question is, did you ever wonder why you like a song? The second question is, I got to read. No, I'm drawing a blank here.
Where does healing come from?
Where does healing come from?
Where does healing come from? That's it. Yeah.
And we talk to you all the time.
Where does healing come from? And again, when you got a room full of MDs, you know, that's
MDs, we mean medical doctors.
That's always kind of a head scratcher for these guys, because you know they're so learned and they approached it scientifically. You know, the interesting thing about healing is that it's an art form. You know, you can, just like music, you know, you can present it as a science, and you know, there's certainly strong cases to pursue music as a science.
Your mic seems a little low.
I haven't touched anything.
No, I know. We know how spirit works. This is Yarah formation and Pyradym.
People talk, right? Yeah, but you know, again, you know, creating joy through sound and resonance. See, that's the thing about Pyradym, is it suggests music without overtly being music. So it allows us to perceive the vibrations and the tone combinations that we're hearing and the texture of what we're hearing, and interpret it in our own way.
So,
I was going to say,
there's
just to cap it off, the classic example is that I have people coming off the table after a sound therapy session saying, I really love that pink or that chartreuse color that you know you're generating with Pyradym, and I'll tell them it doesn't do that color. That's you. It's stimulating you in a very certain way that your brain is lighting up and showing you those colors for a reason.
So there's a question that came in that's a little bit on that topic, and it asks, did the Pyradym consciousness that you met, did it inform you of how it would affect the physical body, and how do the chakras interplay with that? And it might not be a direct and necessary answer, but through experience with this being, did you walk away with some sort of information about how the process of that would happen?
Not really. I think their intention was just to sort of, you know, we don't want to give them too much information to overfill the left brain kind of stuff, and the ramifications of shifting consciousness, raising consciousness, and all these other esoteric aspects of it. So I think they just kind of literally put the blinders on me, because I had a track record of successfully creating a musical instrument, and you know what all that entails, making it easy to use. You know, you turn a knob, something happens. It's an analog instrument, making it very, very simple to work with. Having a standardized tuning platform that was not musically related. That's where the chakra system came into. Chakra system predates the, any tuning system by thousands of years. So, having like a very simple 7, there's that 7 number again, 7 chakra system that had a color associated with it and a range of pitches and tonal textures that you could play with. So I wanted people to be able to connect with the paradigm in the same way that musicians connect with their instruments. Because that's always kind of the downside of a lot of music therapies. If it's a recorded situation, you can't alter it. I wanted people to be able to interact with it in a creative form and have an instrument that would evolve with them.
So we have another question coming in through our Syrian interface behind us, actually, Shmono. He's curious as to
somebody else came. Somebody else wrote that.
Oh, somebody else wrote it.
Yeah, it's an esoteric question.
Oh, you see the synchronicity of that? He's channeling.
Over, I see.
So,
the question is, who are the paradigm entities? And it's a bit of an esoteric question, but also very one that comes up often.
That's a great question. Thank you, whoever asked that.
It was
putting him on the spot
because I was informed that it was a group of 9.
A group of 9.
They had said, and it was like just kind of giving me little pieces of information, just to kind of, calm me down or whatever. So there was a group of 9 people. And they said a group of 9 entities, and only 2 of them had actually embodied human form at one time or another, and it was like pulling teeth. So who's the 2? Come on, you can tell me, that kind of thing. And after a lot of prodding and pleading and all the rest of it, and playing the emotional games. Okay, well, don't tell me, I don't care. They finally said that it was the 2 beings that had incarnated before in human form was Einstein and Tesla. And it was like, oh, name droppers, right? And I really didn't know that much about either one of those gentlemen at the time. Tesla comes up in engineering studies all the time, but they never, there's a unit of electromagnetic density that's named after him. But we learned about all the great scientists that informed the field of electronics, James Clerk Maxwell, Nikola Tesla, et cetera, Edison, and all those kind of guys. But we never really drilled down deep to find out just how unusual Tesla's perception of the field of electronics was. So yeah, that was a study in and of itself. But to find out, that's actually what kind of prompted me to find out more about the guy.
And why were those 2 on the team? There were specific reasons, correct?
Yeah, because the board needed to have somebody that knew what it was like to actually create something. Well, Einstein created with his brain, and Tesla did as well, but Tesla actually physically manifested these thoughts, which is a very difficult process when you try to break it down. Try to take something out of a brain, and then put it down and put it into concrete form to make it consumable, usable for an individual. There's a definitive process there.
And also they needed someone with the awareness of what was available on the planet at the time, correct?
Absolutely. Because it's like, oh, well, and actually they told me that in the channeled writing that I was doing to bring this information in, was that a lot of this technology hasn't been on this planet in a very long time. So they sort of had to reshuffle some of what Pyradym was going to be to accommodate the technology that we had at hand. It's like, well, just get them to, just recalibrate the organization of the the gravitational constant of the universe. It's like, okay, they can't really do that right now, so we're gonna have to go with like diodes. Yeah.
And we will be doing a more in-depth exploration in the not too distant future about this topic itself.
Yeah.
So you can stay tuned for that one.
I mean, I also find it, we talk about, the right person gets the right information, and, how this channel information came to you. Had it come to Ben or I, like, we have absolutely no background in terms of how to build components and inventions and instruments. So it's kind of like this information came to the right person at the right time with the right background, and already those concepts in the mind to work with and create. And
the perfect candidate elect.
Yeah, and just the fact then all of your history kind of lines up, that you worked for Moog, you had this background, you had all these experiences that led up to this point.
Yeah, so. And and I think that would totally be a Tesla kind of thing, because if you look at his background, he died penniless. I mean, he was not a wealthy person throughout his life. He was very philanthropic, though. But also there's an economy there too, which is just something that just kind of popped in. I'm a cheap investment, because like if this information would have came to Ben, for example, Ben would have had to find an electrical engineer and a mechanical engineer and somebody that so it would have to be like a committee just to get this thing going. Whereas my background is
one-stop shop.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. It just kind of pops in. It's like, well, it would kind of look like this, I suppose. And it's like, okay, well, so I guess somebody's got to build it. And so, out to the workshop and the drill press, and off you go. So.
Okay, we're getting slender with time. Let's just close it out with something which is a hot topic in these COVID days. How does Pyradym help boost our immunity system?
Well, one of the aspects of physioacoustics is that it creates a vibration, within the human body, and that's one of the cool things about doing it sonically rather than mechanically, is that you can tune it, so you can feel the tuning, the differences in tuning in various parts of the body, but being able to increase your circulation and increase the flow of the lymphatic fluids, and also the cerebral fluids, and just basically all the fluidic content of your body, which is all part of your processes. One of the things about being more sedentary is that we don't exercise as much, and one of the reasons that exercise is so good for the body is it does allow some of these systems to eliminate toxins within them, through sweat and being able to, again, move the fluids through your body so they can be put into the your waste disposal systems. So building, and I think if nothing else, COVID has demonstrated to us the value of a robust immune system. At the end of the day, this thing goes away either an inoculation or on its own or whatever. There's going to be another one. There's probably going to be another one. I mean, nature finds a way, right?
Yes.
So we're, again, at the end of the day, it's a warning to clean up our backyard.
And also it brings in, potentially new technology, and Pyradym, presenting the possibilities of what sound can do for us physically. I'm pretty excited to see ideas that come out of this, that spark out of this, to keep us in a more healthy state and to really work with our immune systems and reduce stress.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, and I always, I subsequently found out it's sort of an Egyptian design modality of, having several different approaches to a single thing, kind of like the Swiss Army knife approach. You know, having one instrument that can, you know, to extend the metaphor, that's got the fingernail file and also the toothpick in it all in one package is kind of cool. So, you know, we've got the geometry, we've got the crystals, we've got the physioacoustic aspect of it, we've got the wood. You know, again, we connect with wood and other materials that were living and still are living in some certain way. You know, there's an ineffable quality to being able to connect with an instrument and bond with it in this way. Again, musicians were the only ones that were able to do that previously. And this is, you know, available to anybody. If you can turn a knob, you can play a Pyradym.
Yeah. Okay. Well, wonderful, August. That was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody who's joined us.
Absolutely. We only really barely scratched the surface, and we will be continuing these dialogues.
This guy can go on forever, so you know.
Words of Jimmy Case the Bunch. It's just begun. So
You'll never shut me up.
well, that orange juice. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna.
So the live transmission is gonna cut off. But we're gonna pop back on once we set up the audio for the meditation. So
yeah, and we'll just have ambient music playing until 12:27, when the meditation itself will commence. Okay. Wonderful.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks. See you all in a little bit.
Okay.
Bye bye.
And here.
Mm-hmm.